If you need, go ahead.
Good morning and welcome to our SPEDNet Wilton webinar, Academic Coaching, Empowering Students with ADHD and Executive Function Challenges, featuring Kelly Schwenkmeyer. Kelly is a certified academic coach, manages a private coaching practice, and is also an academic coach at Endicott College in Beverly, Massachusetts. Prior to coaching, she taught middle school English for 18 years in the Boston area public and private schools. For more information on Kelly, you can check out our website at www.spednetwilton.org or our Facebook page. All the information from today's webinar, including Kelly's PowerPoint, will be uploaded to the SPEDNet Wilton website and Facebook page. Our moderators today are Eve Kessler, founder and executive director of SPEDNet Wilton, co-president of SPEDNet Wilton, Carolina Corrigan, and I'm Janine Kelly. Just a few ground rules before we get started. Feel free to ask questions through the Q&A button. Please don't use the chat. The Q&A button allows us to keep track of the questions as they're being asked. We will do our best to answer all the questions at the end of the presentation in the order they're received. Also, please be mindful that this is an open forum that's being recorded and we can't guarantee confidentiality. You may not want to reveal any personal information in your questions, and just consider that they will be out there in the public forum if they're asked. Also, any information provided in this webinar by Kelly or the moderators is not intended to be legal or therapeutic advice. The information, content, and materials are for general purposes only. So you can also just remember to check us out at spednetwilton.org, Facebook, and we also have a Twitter site at sped_net. And with that, I will turn you over to Kelly. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you. And thank you, Janine, Lena, and Eve for having me and for the whole SPEDNet community. So today, before I start talking about myself and what brought me to this work, I'm really excited to introduce academic coaching to you. It's a near and dear to my heart, and it's what I love about it is its creativity and the amount of support it gives a student. So my hope today is that you walk away with an understanding of the role of a coach and of a student. I'll touch a little on coaching versus therapy versus tutoring. And then mostly I'll talk a lot about my students. I think it's helpful to hear the stories and hopefully gives you a perspective of the student and how it is for them to come to coaching. I'll touch a little bit on coaching on a college campus and give some resources and suggestions on how to find that. And ultimately, I hope you just see coaching as a viable resource for students that you have or know. So as Janine mentioned, I taught for 18 years in mostly 8th grade English. What I loved about teaching and what is foundational to my work as a coach is helping students find that little nugget inside of them that makes them tick and when they feel best about themselves. I also really was impacted by IEP and 504 meetings, not only for my own child, but for my students I taught, and really tried to help students see that as a moment of empowerment and of an opportunity to really learn about themselves and how they can use that. So that's foundational to my work as a coach. As it was my coach training program, I did it through Coach Training International Institute, sorry. It's now called Coactive Coaching. And that, I feel like I've always been a good listener. That was kind of my natural thing, but I really learned how to listen and how to ask powerful questions that really hold up a mirror to my client, in this case, students, to have them grow their own self-awareness. And thirdly is my own learning story, which perhaps might resonate with a lot of you. So this fancy term, external locus of control, is this idea that I didn't feel any agency in my own learning process. School did not come easily to me. And you can see it in this wheel I made. Perhaps you've seen this wheel in other settings, but an external locus of control, I was too dependent on circumstances and of things outside my control and of what others were saying. So all my life I was told I was probably mildly dyslexic, although I was never tested, so I'm not sure how that was helpful for me to constantly hear, but it certainly became part of my story. I was dependent on, my sister was in the National Honor Society, and it was just kind of known that I wouldn't be. But I never felt agency in that I had tools and strategies that I could learn to overcome what was really hard for me. So my self and my potential was defined by my external world rather than my own thoughts and my mindset and strategies that I could learn and advocate for myself. So my learning story, as I mentioned, is just, I thought English was for smart people. So that just like the door was closed. There was no hope for me in English class. It was all about my relationships with my teachers. If they didn't like me, then I wasn't going to do well. And it was luck if I got an A. And that studying wouldn't make a difference. And probably a really big one for me was if I was assigned a project, it just was so hard for me to see the forest through the trees and how to take that project and think, okay, this is due in a week. It's Monday. It's due next Monday. I'll start it Sunday night. It just was so hard for me to be able to pick out the chunks and work on it little by little. So that's a big part of my work. And I just feel like, I think we often end up doing what we want, what we experienced ourselves. So I feel really strongly about supporting students and having them realize and empowering them that there are skills and strategies, and you have a lot of natural innate gifts in you to help you overcome what's hard for you. So what is coaching? I love this graphic. Simply put, it's a designed partnership, and I italicized designed because it really is about how I meet with a student, and we design that relationship together and set parameters together because I want to meet a student where they are. One student told me, you need to be meaner to me. You're too nice sometimes. And so she really wanted me to hold her accountable to her deadlines. And other students, kind of want the more, I guess, nice would be the word. Anyway, so it's really a deliberate partnership that is designed between the two of us to help a student reach their goal. As we know in the top graph, that's lovely that you hop on your bike and you arrive right where you want to be. But reality is life is at the bottom. I think what's really great about coaching and what I love about it is that, often kids or students are arriving in the pit, but the coaching also happens at the top, because what coaching is helping students realize their potential and strengths and the strategies they can implement. So when they're having high moments, there's a lot of coaching to be done there as well, because it's about remembering what you have and reflecting on what strengths and strategies you used to do something that was hard so that it's transferable when you're in the little dip with the rocks and the water and the storm. So a coach's role, I really like this Native American proverb. So just to start with a premise that this Native American proverb is about is that we all have two wolves living inside of us, right? And one is the bad wolf, representing anger, jealousy, greed, your negative self-talk, your ego, your resentment, and that which brings negativity. And the other wolf represents the good, the joy, the peace, the love, using your strengths, your hope, all of those lovely things. So I see my job as a coach as teaching students how to feed their good wolf, right? Because the one that you feed is the one that wins in the end. So how do you do that, right? So the three big words for me are the three A words. I acknowledge the student. I ask powerful questions that are the kind of questions that turn the mirror on them, so they're learning about themselves. And then thirdly is that accountability piece, which is a big part of coaching. And the student's role is really about willingness and to participate, to be honest, and try new thinking, right? Growth mindset. Are you willing to try new things? A lot of students who struggle with executive functioning and ADHD are really fixed, I find. I put an asterisk on willingness because in my private practice, I really want the students to have buy-in, and it works when there's buy-in. And they want to come and they see the need and they feel like they know where they want to head. Maybe they can't articulate it, but they know they want to head in a direction that isn't where they currently are. However, on college campuses, I have students who come to me perhaps a bit unwillingly because of eligibility for a sport or because of probation, if their grades. They come to appreciate what coaching is, but they don't always arrive at the doorstep with that willingness. So hence my asterisk. I liked these quotes. These are directly from students who have texted me, and I think it shows their growth mindset. They're excited to come back, right? Maybe they now see and most importantly feel the benefits of what coaching is doing for them as humans and as students. So kind of the bigger picture of coaching is this constant balance of transactional versus transformational. So what I mean by transactional is a student asks a question, how do you do Google Calendar? And I teach how to do Google Calendar as a strategy to stay organized. Whereas transformational is more, I'm so stressed out, my roommate's driving me crazy, I don't know what to do. And to me, that's not a moment for advice and working through it. It's kind of backing up and getting the bigger picture, and that being transformational on skills, how to deal with things that are kind of blocking you from your academic work. I'm just going to read this quote. The student summed it up perfectly. As a third-year college student, I thought I was alone in this process. I would sail in my boat of anxiety throughout the semesters and just scrape up the grades I needed to succeed. I thought this is just what education was. You're given a task and you're left alone to accomplish it in a world where so much more is happening than just academic assignments. And I just feel like that sums up perfectly coaching, because that is what it is. It is this balance of the brain and the heart, because the reality is students have a lot going on in their lives and one feeds the other. I thought it might be nice to take a moment and just read through these and see if there are some that resonate with you for a student you have in mind, a student you have as a child or in your classroom, and see which one might resonate with you as to how coaching could help. And what I love about all of these is it's really about the whole student. I mean, these are skills to succeed academically and also just in life. I think self-advocacy is maybe kind of one of the, I mean, they're all so important, but maybe one of the end things that we all hope for students, right? We want them to know what they need and to be able to ask for it and advocate for themselves. It goes back to, sitting in meetings of those 504 and IEPs, and really wanting students to take that knowledge and then use it to ask for what they need and know how to create a schedule for themselves that fits their needs. Maybe not all language-based classes in a row, and having a break in between. Often more opportunity for that in college than in high school, but really just knowing that and communicating with teachers and having the confidence to realize that they're allowed to do that and they're allowed to say what they need. My students in college who have extra time, sometimes the professor forgets in these lockdown browsers, the Zoom world of taking exams. Sometimes the professor forgets to mark that. And just reminding my students that you are allowed to send an email to your professor and say, hey, don't forget I get extra time. And sometimes I can help them write that. And other times I just just reminding them of their self-advocacy. So hopefully one of those kind of coaching things resonates with you and the students you have in mind. So a little about coaching versus therapy. I like the cartoon in the middle. So coaching is about working with someone who is a healthy, functioning person who has a goal and feels potential, but is having a hard time getting there. So it's about being right here in this moment, healthy and functioning, and how to move forward. In therapy, like if I took the example of anxiety, which I know a lot of my students feel, and some have diagnoses of anxiety, things going on, and others just feel anxious. But for the student I have that has an anxiety, prescribed by a doctor, coaching is not about looking at the construct of that anxiety or going to the root of it. This you'll see what I mean on how this can come up when I share my stories of students, but I hear these moments, and my job is not to dive in and understand the construct. Mine is just to hear it, acknowledge it, and then how to move forward. Coaching and therapy go really, really well together. I love when I'm working with a student and might suggest, I do a lot of breathing exercises for those who feel anxious. And sometimes they say, oh, I just did this in therapy. He was talking about. So it's nice, for them to get it from two different people in their lives and in different capacities. So a session, a coaching session is usually 45 minutes to an hour. And they generally happen once a week. In my coaching program, they often talked about how 90% of coaching happens outside the session, which really resonates with me because I think about if I learn, if I'm reading one of my kind of personal development books, I'm reading it and I hear it, but then I'm out in the world and then all of a sudden it sinks in and it's like in my body after I see that commercial or I meet someone on the street. I'm like, oh, so the same goes for coaching. Once a week tends to be a good amount of time to have them practice the tactical skills of creating their personalized organization system. And also just, I don't know, enough time to reflect on kind of what they're learning about themselves. So I start a session. I try to go beyond the how are you? I like metaphors. Sometimes I get the hairy eyeball look, but I like to ask them, describe your mood and a weather pattern. And it takes a minute to think, but it kind of gets them out of their left brain and into the right brain, the more creative side. A student taught me this one, the roses, thorns, and what I liked, she taught me was the buds. So what's been great about since I last saw you, what's been hard, and the buds being, and what feels like it has a lot of potential for this week. And then if they just can't deal with talking about themselves, because maybe it's just a week that is like that, a favorite stuffed animal. And that can just be a fun conversation and a window in, to what's going on. And then I'll move into kind of the tactics, right? So what is this personalized organization system? I'm really into the word system and having them create a system so things become automated for them. Oh, I got an email from a teacher. I know I need to write down on my to-do list, or I put it in my Google Keep, or I make a reminder in my phone, whatever it is for them. So we go over that. We do a screen share moment of what's going on in my Google Classroom, what's on Canvas, what's been posted. And again, using their personalized system, they're working on creating automaticity with that of, okay, laying out the week, how are you feeling about this, any emails that need to be sent to professors, and doing all of the skills of being a student. But in that, as the coach, I'm always looking for the little window, the door to open to kind of have that moment of personal development. So what can you learn about this moment? And, oh, that professor made you really mad in class and then kind of got snippy with you. Okay, so let's, look, this happened with a student. So let's sit back and, can you think of about what your tone of voice was? Anyway, so often in going over the tactical things of academic skills, there's always moments of, I can hear how they're talking to themselves, self-talk. I talk to the students a lot about their own self-talk and how that's back to the wolf, how that feeds the bad wolf. And let's try to shift your thinking and your habits. And in that, I always ask the students, what feels most important for you to work on today? And that could just be organizing a calendar for the entire session. And that could be my roommate's driving me crazy and I really need some strategies on how to talk to them and how I want to be living in this room with someone that's difficult for me. And accountability is always the ending. And I phrase it in a way that I present as a challenge, a homework, but it's always in quotes because I don't want to add more homework to their life, is you can accept my challenge, you can deny my challenge, or you can give me a counter offer. So it might be, how am I going to know that you have your outline done for tomorrow if that's the goal they have? And they say, I'll text you. And I'll say, okay, don't text me words, just text me an image of it or your favorite emoji, and you'll see in my stories. So my phone is often buzzing with fun pictures from students of, following through on their accountability piece. So then I know they're doing it. It's fun, like kind of outside the coaching relationship. Okay, so this is the part where I'm going to just tell you some stories about students I work with. These are not their real names. These are students from, the beautiful thing about Zoom, these students are actually all over the United States of America, which is kind of cool. So I just want to share these stories as a way to see how coaching plays out and hopefully a little bit from the perspective of a student. So Sarah came to me right after her mother reached out. She had her neuropsych test results and she was put on a 504 for attention and focus issues. She was in a couple AP classes and honors classes. And I think junior year, This was a theme I saw a lot this year. I don't know if it was COVID related or just being a junior, but was utterly exhausted. And her stress and anxiety was really getting in the way of feeling what she wanted to accomplish from the schedule she chose to create for herself. So a lot of the coaching work was about managing her stress and anxiety, which came down to time management, which I think was a new concept for her. I mean, not that she hadn't heard that, but I think for a student who was in such high-powered classes, I think she assumed she had good time management, but not in regards to how it related to her stress and anxiety, if that makes sense. Like doing her work, she had good time management, but she was exhausted. So in addition to anxiety and stress, which I'll explain in a minute, we did a Google Calendar, which she didn't really have. She just like kept it all in her head. And I tell my students a lot, like try to get the logistics of schedules out of your head and onto a sheet of paper and let that live somewhere else, and not try to keep track of your doctor's appointment and when you need to talk to the teacher, and keep that like out in the world on a sheet of paper or in a calendar. So anyway, we did Google Calendar, and then we built a day. So this concept about building a day, we had the week view, and this is when she was still hybrid. She filled in, every Zoom she knew she had, and that was a certain color. And then when she had lacrosse practice, and that was a color. So anyway, slowly the days started to build, and she could see what we focused on was the white space. And so it became a conversation about how do you want to use your white space? And because an issue for her was being so tired, was a conversation about what gives you energy. Is it a walk with a friend? Is it dinner with your family? Is it totally zoning out and watching, I don't know, some show on Netflix, or TikToking, swiping on TikTok? So this white space became about how to strategize, first of all, using 20 minutes at a time rather than thinking you have to have 4 hours to do homework, and how she wanted to fill that. And so she ended up filling one of her white spaces. She chose red, I can't remember why, was for Netflix. So I think she felt like she should probably outlaw Netflix from her life, but she found a way to do it for, I think she did 20 minutes, or maybe it was probably a half hour. Her show was probably a half hour. And she just allowed herself that. And that kind of fed her and gave her a little bit of energy so that she could go back to her pretty intense course load. For anxiety, we did breathing techniques, where you, there's a new book out about breathing, where you exhale longer than you inhale. And that is supposed to engage your parasympathetic nervous system. And she also decided on her own terms that her phone would go under her mattress while she was doing her homework. Okay, Hudson. Hudson is a gem of a college senior who is the first one in his family to go to college, which I think weighs on him. He has ADHD, which he takes medication for. And he's currently in a state of feeling a lot of stress because it's hard for him to start. It's hard for him to turn that switch on to start. And he needs to graduate this, actually he's a senior now, that's a typo. He needs to graduate this spring for financial reasons, and just like he wants to be done. So the image is all of the notes he takes when we have a meeting. And these are so dear to me, I love them. So when we talk, he likes to take notes, and then he has this little coaching wall that he keeps to remind him. Practice showing up is really important for him. So this is a little bit of an example of kind of a therapy versus coaching moment. He has shared with me that elementary school and middle school were not happy times for him. I think he was had a hard time fitting in. I think there was a lot going on in his life. I don't know the details, but he refers to it. And he also refers to, he was taught by his family when that things get hard, just don't go to school that day. So I think he missed a lot of school in his younger years. So what he took away from that was, oh, you just kind of back off and don't show up when you're having a hard time. And that was one of his coaching goals, actually, was to practice showing up. So I can't remember if those are his words or mine, but that is like what he aims to do. So when, another part of our coaching work, part of coaching is, feeling a sense of purpose in your life. And so as a student, they have lots of purposes, but I think that sometimes they don't know which one to pick, or maybe they've lost sight. So he had a class, we were meeting, and he had a class. He said, I'm not going to my next class. I didn't do my homework. I read it, but I didn't do the reflection writing piece of it. And so then I reminded him, okay, well, remember, one of your goals is to practice showing up. And he didn't want to because it makes him feel, kind of full of shame when he didn't finish his homework. And I said, well, let's work on recreating a purpose as to why you show up to class. And he said, well, I love my professor and I love going into breakout rooms and talking about what we read because I learned so much from my classmates. And I said, okay, so could you show up to class to be present to your classmates and to show your respect for the professor and give your energy to others because you have a lot to offer in a conversation? And so just that little switch of showing up for that reason instead of showing up with like every single piece of the homework done switched it for him. And then he was able to show up, and he showed up in a different way, giving like a different sense of purpose of showing up for that class. So that was really big for him. Self-talk is a big one for him. There's an assessment I sometimes do with students, and it labels the ways in which we all self-sabotage. And so we've looked at those and kind of talked about when they pop up and feed into his procrastination. A lot of work on keeping lists and having them visible in his room, not only these nice reminders about who he wants to be, but also like what's due today. And in the end, we're all works in progress. His confidence has gone up, and I think he kind of sees the forest through the trees with his own sense of self and his balance of his job he has off campus, which means a lot to him, and showing up and being a self-starter and turning this switch on. And if it means I'm going to write the third paragraph of the paper instead of writing the intro first, it doesn't matter. It got me started. I'm in the ring. That little picture of I'm in the center there. I'm doing what I need to do. Kyle is a college junior, and he's a recruited athlete, and told me he had very few skills to succeed as a student in college. I've worked with him since freshman year, and when I first met him, he literally was like gray. I think he was so overwhelmed with college, but was so excited to be there because he was a recruited athlete, but kind of didn't know which way to turn. And so he was in a really powerful moment that became kind of foundational to what we did. Was freshman year, he was an education major, and he was in a class, I think it was a special ed, teaching special ed, and he had to do a presentation on ADHD. So he put a slideshow together, and in doing the slideshow, this child that never wanted to talk and was really quiet and reluctant and kind of didn't know where to start, came to me and talked for 50 minutes straight about, I think I have ADHD. I'm not qualified to diagnose him, but it was so empowering for him to realize this and to realize, okay, wait, so there's strategies, there's things I can do to help myself overcome this. It's a work in progress, but to have him realize this about himself was really, I don't know, I felt lucky to witness his kind of breakthrough. He had so much stress and anxiety, and I think his confidence was so low. But this breakthrough meant a lot to him, and was, I don't know, it just got him unstuck. He stepped out of the glue and he can move a little bit. So we work a lot on, because I think his confidence for all his high school years really suffered. And so we work on communicating, interviewing for an internship, practicing that, communicating clearly with professors, and kind of talking about the affect you show up with in class and what message that sends. And if you're looking to get help from a professor, how can you approach a professor? I'm just thinking of him, sorry. He texted me the other day and was really stressed out and asked for a quick half hour. And, it was just he, in his stress, forgot that when he makes a list, his little personalized system, that when he makes a list, when he goes through his canvas and makes a list of what's coming up, all of a sudden it was his shoulders went down, he leaned back in his chair, and I said, so how are you feeling compared to 29 minutes ago? He's like, I got it. I'm on top of what I need to do. It's really hard, but I have a sense of what I need to do. And, my head is no longer spinning with my to-do list and that professor who's mad at me. And I have it laid out as to how I'm going to approach this. So in the end, I feel like he's more honest with himself and what he wants out of his college career. I think he doesn't strive for A's. And he's okay with that. And he knows that B's and C's are where he is and is so much further than where he was because he knows himself and that he can now advocate for himself more than he used to be able to. Daisy. So Daisy is a high school junior who chose not to do hybrid. So she stayed home. There was some social things going on, and she just felt more comfortable doing things remotely. She was very familiar with academic success, but yet was failing all of her classes and wasn't showing up. And I think was stuck in perfectionism. And those are her words, that she can't, if she's not going to do it really well, then she doesn't want to do it. And so I think the Zoom was overwhelming, and then not being able to do things to her standards was really hard. And her confidence and motivation took a hit due to it. So this is kind of a fun story. So she is a swimmer, and I was a swimmer growing up. And I knew in my swimming world that my coach, who was pretty funky for the 80s, we used to do visualizations. We used to I know athletes do this now. You know, you visualize your race, you visualize the 3-point shot. You do these things as a way of, I guess now it's the manifesting. Anyway, so I knew I did that. So as a swimmer, I had a sense she would kind of be into this. I said, "Oh, have you done visualizations?" And she kind of lit up. So in my coaching world, I have a few scripts for visualizations. And I said, "How would you like to try one?" It was on a day where she was particularly feeling down. I said, "Would you like to try one?" And I said, "So what, in my world of doing this visualization, it's about getting in touch with kind of your inner leader. But I want you to name what you want to be in touch with yourself." So she called it her inner success. I think the self that she always knew as a student that was feeling super lost to her. So I read her right. She was into a visualization. She was willing to go there with me. So she got her camera off and we did the visualization and she took notes. And before she started talking, and then she shared with me, and I said, "So what happened? What did you see? What did you feel?" And she didn't really see anything, but she shared, and I love this. She shared that she got this feeling of like this gold glittery feeling all over her. And I knew that meant a lot to her and it didn't need to mean anything to me. But I think I think she felt it in her body, right? That mind body connection, that she's a very smart, heady person who likes to intellectualize, and we had great conversations, but now it was different. She felt it in her body and she knew she wanted more of this. So then we talked about, okay, so how do you get this gold glittery feeling with Zoom and papers that aren't getting done? And the perfectionism, a student who I had that was in theater taught me that during tech week, everyone runs around and says, "Done is beautiful, done is beautiful." And so I loved that. And so I shared it with her and it worked for her. And so we would sometimes spend time determining, okay, here are the 5 things due. Which ones are kind of done as beautiful? You don't need to make sure every T is crossed and every I is dotted, but you just need to get it done. And then which ones are you going to dot the T's? No, you don't dot T's. You cross T's and dot I's. You can't do everything perfectly on every assignment. So this done is beautiful was something that I think resonated with her. One other thing is I talk to students a lot about morning routines. I think they're powerful, and I think they can be 1 minute long, and I think they can be 10 minutes long. So in this world of her feeling, just having a hard time with Zoom, she described that she would set her alarm, I think like my own children do, and the students I work with, for 3 minutes before the Zoom starts, and you get out of bed and you got your hoodie on and the hood stays on and log into Zoom. And I said, "Well, that sounds like you're getting out of bed for Zoom." I said, "What if you get out of bed for you?" And so, she kind of thought about that. And then she said, "Okay, I'm going to try this for a week." And this is today at 8:01 a.m. So that was her accountability piece of setting her alarm 20 minutes or 30 minutes, I can't remember, before Zoom started. And she was into crystals, and she would grab her crystals and kind of decide which one was going to be on her desk that day. And she felt like she was getting out of bed for her rather than for Zoom, so that she had this 20 minutes to start her day how she wanted to start it, rather than, I don't know, feeling victim to Zoom, I guess. And Jenny is the last student I'll talk about. Jenny she's a senior in college and finished her coursework with the exception of 2 incompletes, and is hoping to walk through graduation in a few weeks. So she's got 2 labs left and they're hanging heavy. And she's feeling a lot of shame and guilt. And again, my job as a coach isn't to kind of dwell and talk about the shame and guilt, certainly acknowledge it and try to empathize with it. But I just tried to, so this visual on the right was my response to her kind of sharing that she felt that way. And I think shame and guilt is a common feeling of students having a hard time in school. She went from one coast to the other to go to college. And I mean, I think that takes a lot of logistical challenges, a lot of bravery. She stepped outside the box of her high school friend. So I just had her kind of walk me through, the moment in the college process to the 4 years that got her to a really incredible place. That yes, you've hit a bump, and yes, finishing these labs is really hard, but you've done so much to get here. So let's just review. And this page is like, not even like, it could be 20 million of those pages. So I took notes while she talked. And then I sent her the screenshot and said, just leave this as your screensaver or have it on your desk just to remind you of like the amazing things you've done and all the skills you've had to get to where you are to finish almost 8 semesters of college. So she said that she has a hard time with time, that time just kind of passes by and she can't believe another week's gone by and the lab is still kind of hanging over her. So I noticed that in, not even because of COVID, but just the computer world, that when a student starts an assignment, I feel like they have to go on like a scavenger hunt and 700 clicks in this teacher's system and that teacher's system and this one linked. And so I think that can, like, you just kind of get lost in trying to find what it is you need to do. So the work was to have a calendar in the room that she looked at behind her desk to remind her, like, there's time, not as a stressor, but as an urgency. And then to create one doc and create her own links so that everything she needed to do was in one document, because I think the clicking and the finding was distracting for her. So the sense of urgency also, I kept saying to her, I feel like your work needs to live and breathe in the room with you. Like, it's so lost in your computer. Printing is challenging, I realize, because not everyone has a printer, but some things she tried to print so that they were on her desk when she would get up in the morning. This calendar kind of looking at her with what's due. She set up weekly meetings with a professor, even if she didn't feel like she needed, as her own accountability system to kind of, here's the progress I'm making. Here's what I'm doing. And then she had me as well. So in the end, she's using this calendar and she's building her days so that time doesn't just float away like it so easily can. She's trying to chunk her days and have, for her, what feeds her is going for walks, so working those in. But this idea of this living and breathing her life with her in a room and not lost in a computer was important for her. So those are my stories and the success moments. I love the picture down at the bottom. My student was 21, so that picture is okay. He had a thesis and writing was really hard for him. And he said, I want it done by Friday and I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. And I said, oh, this is exciting. How am I going to know you did it? He said, I don't know. I'll let you know. And so that's how he let me know. I think I got it at like 4:30 on a Friday. And then the text, the student got all B+ for the first time at his college. And then, back to that locus of control, I think if a student can say, I know what I need, that's that inner locus of control. They have their habits, their self-talk. They realize that that's what they control, and you can't control this outside stuff, but you can control your inner world and how you're approaching what's in the outer world, which is about responding more and reacting less. And available skills, available resources, that's another. I know a lot of high schools, colleges, have writing centers and math centers, and students can be very reluctant to go to those. But in the self-advocacy confidence piece growing, I think it becomes easier to go to those and direct how they want the meeting to be. I always tell my students, you don't just need to go to the writing center and just hand over your paper. You can ask specific feedback of what you want, so you feel like you're in charge of the meeting and you're getting the feedback that helps you most. So just to switch to coaching in college, if some of you are in the space of doing the college search like I am right now, just a few tips. So coaching in college is becoming more and more common. They're often called success coaches or academic coaches. It's open to all students. It's generally under the umbrella, of the college divisions of accessibilities or a student success center. Some have academic centers. Generally, there's an extra fee involved. And when I get my students, I'm often running with texting and figuring out our own schedule. So it just becomes a personalized thing. There's many interesting studies. Indiana Wesleyan has some interesting work. They have life coaches on campus. And this one talks about ADHD. And the stats are pretty startling, but the good news is the study finds that coaching really helps. 6% of students on college campuses have ADHD, and it's the most common disability. They have the retention issue is big, I think, in colleges right now in general, but for ADHD students. But they've really found that academic support really helps them bump up the half a grade difference they find that ADHD students have with a student without ADHD. And it helps with, I think, self-confidence, and is again, can go well with the counseling department at a college or at a high school, but can also perhaps be a preventative for that if they're getting the support they need academically and managing their emotional well-being. So that you can see there's a hyperlink. So when you get the slides, you can look at that study more closely. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the students I mentioned, about my work, about logistics, anything that you're wondering about.
So we do have a few questions in the Q&A here. So I'll just read from top to bottom.
Okay, great.
With executive functioning issues, I'm always amazed how my daughter is completely on top of everything she cares about, clothes she wants, plans with friends, and absolutely ignores anything like chores they need to do, etc. Is this typical with your clients, and what strategies might you offer?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is typical. It's something I see in my own child. Strategies I offer is to acknowledge that, talk about it, that's fun, get to know that part of them, and then move to the academic conversation and ask how they're feeling about those things. And what I find is usually it's not feeling so great and feeling so confident, hence maybe why it's being ignored, right? A lot of procrastination is really about managing your emotions. And talking about, okay, so if this is how you feel over here with the things you love, how can you transfer? I mean, you mentioned she's on top of her things and with her friends a lot. So really digging into what strengths they have and what strengths are you using to maintain those parts of your life. I mean, lots of people have things in life they don't love. So that's a really great place to start, that she has passions and friends. And so using and exploring more her strengths to transfer them over to the academic world where she might not be feeling so great, and helping her come to realize that things grow bigger when they're ignored. And that is a huge piece of stress and anxiety. So, trying to work on narrowing this time down. I don't know her organization system, but that idea of building a day and seeing your colors and where do you have white space perhaps could be a helpful strategy. I don't know if that answers.
So many students have iPhone, iPads. Is there a reason to use Google Calendar as opposed to the calendar that is native to their smartphones?
Great question. I guess I say Google because so many schools use Google as their platform, and the students are so used to sharing everything in, they turn in their documents in Google. So I guess just in the Google suite, they already have that. So that's when I introduce it. I don't force it. I have one student who uses the one that comes on an Apple. So he uses his Apple calendar. So just an introduction. I so wanted to work for a student, but Google has so many different, they have Google Task and Google Keep. There's a lot of different tools that I like to show them. And if they adopt it, that's great, but whatever calendar system works for them.
Would you be able to share the name of the new book that described the breathing techniques?
Great question. That's funny, I knew I was going to be asked that. And I couldn't remember his name and I meant to look it up. I actually listened to it as a podcast. Okay, something just came to me, Brian Nestor. I can't remember if that's right, but it was Fresh Air. And he was doing his book tour and it's called Breath. I could get on my phone right now and look, or if someone wants to look. I think it's either called Breathe or Breath, that key last letter at the end of that word. Is it breathe or is it breath?
How do you find a coach for a middle schooler, and how do you help a child to advocate for themselves?
The middle schooler, that's a great question. I mean, there's a lot of companies or organizations, or I don't know what the word is, that are popping up, like BookSmart, I think it's called. There's coaching companies out there. BookSmart is a good one. I've looked at their stuff and have friends who work for them. And in terms of advocating, I mean, to me, what coaching is and what helps students advocate is turning a student's questions into a moment of what works best for you, and just conversations where you're exploring when a student feels best and when they recognize they feel good about themselves and they applied themselves at school, and then really dissecting. So what was it? What was it that worked in there? You know, so if it's a motivation piece, you know, like my recruited athlete, we talk a lot about, okay, clearly you have motivation and you have persistence and you have determination because you're a recruited athlete. That took a lot for you to get here. So just really dissecting the pieces of their strengths to help them then advocate for themselves and to grow their confidence, for them to recognize that they have a lot of natural, creative, resourceful things in them that are gifts to use as advocating. I mean, that's a process that makes it sound super simple, but I think just always in the practice of recognizing the good and having them recognize the good to use as a way to use their voice.
What are some of the powerful questions you find yourself often referring to? For example, you mentioned, how will I know you did this? I thought that was helpful. Is there other questions, or that you use different phrases of connect, tactics, and assignments?
One of my favorite questions is, which I feel like can be used a lot, and I try not to overuse it, is what feels important about this to you? So is it the roommate moment? Is it the friendship moment? Is it the I'm choosing to pick my outfits instead of do, I don't know, my outline? Rather than going in with the advice, is to step back and do what feels most powerful or what feels most important to you. What's your best way forward in this moment right now? When they're kind of lost in these stories, you know, who gets to define your reality? Who's in charge of you? But just kind of big questions that help them dig into the moment.
When do you know if the relationship is working? I'm assuming this is with the coach, and when it's not and unlikely to?
Mm-hmm. I have had some that haven't worked at my job at Endicott, and I don't take it personally. I can't take it personally. I mean, just in life, I think, you know, we just meet people that the karma isn't right. I know it's not working when, I don't know, I could just feel it. Like there isn't a natural back and forth and a sharing. There was a lot of reluctance to share and a lot of reluctance to kind of work on suggestions or work on what we talked about. And I just had to acknowledge, like, to my boss, like, I don't think this is working. I think coaching is great for him, but I'm not sure I'm the one that's right. In my own practice, I like to talk to a student first and do kind of a lighter exercise for 20 minutes for them to decide, am I the right person? Did I like her kind of vibe on the phone? And for me, it's about, do they have a sense of where they want to go? And they don't need to articulate that perfectly. I don't mean it that way, but like they have a sense of why they're on the phone with me and what they want to get out of it. So it needs to be mutual. And I don't think it's anything personal. I just think it just has to work.
Here's another how to parent locate a coach for a high school student.
How to locate a coach?
Yeah.
Well, there's two ways to go. I mean, I combine my education background and my training as a coach together, but I think, you know, looking for these success coaches, looking for these organizations that work with students, and some can be kind of the tutoring content matter, and then others can be more the broad coaching. You know, if it's not sheerly academic and it's life, I mean, you could Google life coaches and wellness coaches. There's a lot out there that work with teens.
Do you have any recommendations for helping students that lack motivation to do better in school?
It's a really great question, and a really hard question, and one I feel like is so every day right now with how students are learning and the world they're living in. A lot of projecting to the future and how, you know, close your eyes and imagine graduation. There you are in your cap and gown. Who do you want to be gathered there with you? What do you want to feel in that moment? And then kind of having that, again, that mind-body connection of really feeling what that might feel like, and then working backwards. And I don't know, you know, that reminder and the encouragement and the support, and we all have to do things in life that we don't really love, but like these end results are really awesome. So trying to balance the big picture, the resonating, this is where I'm trying to get to. And then also, again, finding, so much of coaching is about finding your sense of purpose and your strengths and your potential and your like peak moments in life, and narrowing down the elements of those and how to take those and apply them to this moment right now to get you out of this like sluggy feeling of lack of motivation.
For Sarah, the student, most therapists work with CBT / breathing to help overcome her anxiety. How is your coaching process different?
Maybe not as in depth. I don't know. I don't know CBT really well. I guess it's different in that it's in response to academic struggles, right? So I'm not doing it kind of unrelated. It's showing up in how it affects her academics. So I mean, mine is all influenced by I do a lot of yoga and a lot of the reading I choose to do and podcasts I listen to and practice those things myself. So I just introduce them to students in a way that are just for their toolbox. Again, not diving in deep to her anxiety and her feelings of stress, or mostly anxiety, and just giving in the moment real examples for her to work on. I think it's probably a nice counterpart. I don't know if it's different, less, more, or I mean, I don't think it's better or worse. I just think it's another piece maybe for her.
How would you help a student that doesn't think they need help managing their ADD? We've been through therapists and stopped as I'm fine, I don't need help, even though he can't get started on projects without us micromanaging the process.
Mm-hmm. Again, it's that piece of what feels important to you. What is it that you want? And I don't know. I mean, I think you're right. I think kids need, in order to there needs to be buy-in. They need to want this, and there must be some part of them where this is hard. And I don't, you know, it's that honesty with yourself. So in coaching, for me, it would be relationship building and really kind of digging into the resistance of help and what it is you want, and trying to bridge those pieces. Because I imagine there's moments where he's bumping up against something that doesn't make him feel great in his academic world, or maybe non-academic world. And being honest about that would be work that coaching could help with, maybe.
Yeah, I don't see it anymore. Oh, here, can you talk, excuse me, can you talk a bit about your go-to resources, books that are on your shelf, journals you read, sites you visit, professionals you follow?
I can. I just got in the mail yesterday Martha Beck's new book. Martha Beck is a coach and runs a coach program. I really like her. She, balances her 3 Harvard degrees and kind of what that did to her and how she moved into more of a coaching world, balancing her intellectual world. Let's see. I listen to podcasts. What do I listen to? I listen to Brene Brown. I'll listen to Kelly Corrigan. I like her. Rich Roll is interesting. I listen to Smartless. I just listened yesterday on my walk with the one with George Clooney. It was fabulous. Gwyneth Paltrow has some interesting people on. I'm just going through my phone. The Hubermann Lab is one I just got. He's a neuroscience professor at Stanford. And it's like you're taking a Stanford class for free. He breaks down emotions and what's happening in your body, sleep. He does all sorts of things. So that makes me feel smart when I take that. I do Fresh Air a lot on books coming out. The Knowledge Project, like I just did Angela Duckworth on grit. I do Tim Ferriss on my bookshelf. I read Mary Oliver poems. I don't know. That's for my own emotional well-being. Let's see. I have some classes I took about how we sabotage ourselves. Mark Hansen's book. I don't know if anyone knows that. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Beep. I won't say the word. Starts with an F. And that is about kind of determining when you're feeling overwhelmed and thinking you're more important than you are, kind of like deciding what matters in your life. And that's what you should put your energy into. So that's kind of a larger coaching. I follow a lot on Instagram, some coaches on Instagram, some academic ones on Instagram. You probably want to know the names, and I can't remember the names of them without going through my phone. I this morning, I'm still in my coaching groups where we talk about different topics. So that's a professional development for me. I don't know, COVID, I've walked 1,000 million miles, and they've all been a lot of really interesting podcasts, and most of them I shared with you.
Oh, sorry, we have a couple more questions. Our daughter is graduating high school this year, off to college in the fall. Her just diagnosed ADHD is off the charts, coupled with some anxiety from multiple external factors. She's not yet amenable to coaching. Her dad and I have taken this so far. She's having difficulty taking action, getting to buy in, and sometimes feel as though we live with an addict because of our enabling when she falters. It's a tough love approach, really best right now until she gets this and accepts responsibility that she needs some help outside of us.
Oh, that's really hard. I don't know, I might reframe the phrase tough love. I certainly think I know what you mean by that. But maybe the frame is, the reframe is, I'm not trying to tell you how to parent, but that we love and support you. And I can see that you're struggling. And this, the link in that slide of the data is that it's harder when you get to college. That's just kind of a fact. So we would love to support you in gaining some skills before you go. So when you're ready, let us know. But here are some things that, maybe show her some websites, or maybe show her some of those statistics, not as a scare technique, but just as an empowering moment of, okay, here's your diagnosis. Here's what's said is super helpful when you get to campus. That study talks about how being supported before you arrive on campus and once you get on campus is a really great duality of succeeding freshman year. Hopefully she'll come to it and hit some pain points that really have her ask for help. But that's hard when they don't see it. But maybe it's just a conversation about wanting to, what it is you want rather than the what's currently happening, the projection, and how do you want college to go for you? Here you sit, you're about to graduate. What do you imagine freshman year? And what can you imagine might be a little bit difficult, and here's some support that might help that so you can thrive. I have a lot of books about thriving in college. So you can thrive when you arrive on campus.
How can you work with a student who simply doesn't care, has totally checked out with 6 weeks to go before they graduate?
Mm-hmm. How can I work with them? I mean, acknowledging that this is a really hard time. I think, you know, maybe it's feeling like we're coming out of COVID, but I'm seeing that my students, it's like they can finally exhale a little bit back to breathing. And now they're feeling COVID. I'm finding it interesting. And some kids who've been motivated throughout COVID aren't anymore. So I don't know, allowing a little space, I guess, of it's been really hard and life has been weird and unbelievably challenging. But I think I just did this with one of my students, of reflecting on what you're walking away with after living a COVID year. And I think it's interesting for students to think about. And based on the conversation I had with a student, she was actually quite surprised by her list. And I think then proud of herself. So maybe it's a conversation of reflecting on like, wow, it's been a lot and you've done an incredible job getting through this. And here we are, we're almost walking out the door back into life. But there's a lot of emotional baggage that goes with that, including just get me to the freaking finish line of high school. I imagine so many students feel. But it's been 3 years of really awesome hard work. So how do you want to end these last 6 weeks? I often have students come up with an image, and I'm also into color. I guess I do this a lot in my yoga class. You imagine a color you want to feel, or you imagine this image of, I want to see the beach. I want to feel that warm sun on my toes. And so that's the equation of graduating. And so what do you want to do to get there so that you don't look back and feel regret about how you finished? I don't know. I don't know. And maybe there's a balance of being okay with just getting to the finish line, this like, let's finish strong versus, wow, it's been a lot with COVID. And it's really great you got to the finish line.
Yeah, I think we're all there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, to be honest, I mean, this is
Totally.
so hard on the kids. It's hard on adults, but oh my gosh, it's been a long year.
I would take another hit if it meant they could get back to life. Just watching the impact on them is really hard.
Yeah.
In my own house, just in my work. Yeah.
Yeah. Now I have 2 high schoolers and 1 middle schooler. It's excuse me.
But it is interesting. I mean, there are low moments in my own house, but when my daughter's feeling okay, she can express how much she's learned about herself and her ability. I mean, if nothing else, one thing she said is, I can sit in my room and be by myself so much longer than I was ever able, and be like, okay with being by myself. And that in and of itself, like as a skill for life, is awesome. Maybe her academics weren't so high, as hot as they could have been, because she was just challenged by it all and her own struggles. But I don't know that. Yeah. Just try to hang on to those things we did learn.
Yeah. I mean, I think most of these times comes with somewhat of a silver lining. Sometimes it's just, sometimes you have to come out of it to see it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just rotten, and not to be Pollyanna about it and just say, this is rotten.
Yeah.
That balance, right? That balance.
All right. Well, it looks like we don't have any more questions, and people are kind of dropping off. That was amazing.
Thank you.
That was great. Thank you so much. Just for everybody, the name of the book is Breath by James Nestor.
Oh, thank you for looking that up. James, not Brian.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly. It was really, really great. And I love how you focus so much further beyond just the academics. There's so much that goes into your outside life, right? That goes into the academics. And I love how your focus is on that. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Looks like there's something in the chat. Oh, just
I
a
think, thank you.
More thank yous. Many
Wow.
thank yous.
Yes.
Many you're welcomes.
Yes, many thank yous. All right. Well, thank you very much, and
You're
have a
welcome.
great rest of the summer or spring, summer.
Thank you. Thank you. You too. And thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it was lovely.
Thank you, Kelly.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Oh, good.